Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and today I got some high quality, entertaining Shadowland clears to share with you guys. Mostly with tier 1 characters, mostly with really interesting tactics and kind of skill effects. So this first one is a stage 1 Agent 13, and what we're doing is skill canceling the 4th skill. So essentially, I screwed it up there, but essentially what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to tap the 4th skill and then right after tap another skill, and you'll get that bubble, and that bubble is worth 2 seconds of immunity. And so you just keep doing that over and over again, and as you can see, I'm racking up close to, I think I string together at some point 20 seconds of immunity back to back to back to back. You just have to stay close enough to the enemy in order for them to be targetable so that you can continue to do 4 cancel 2 or 4 cancel 1 or 4 cancel 3 or 4 cancel 5 because if they get too far away, you'll just do 4 and she'll cast the skill and she'll end the skill. Additionally, you don't want to try this against teams or against fights, stages in Shadowland where there's lots of iframes because, again, if they iframe, you have no target. So it's actually a little bit difficult, and the few times that I messed it up, it was either Star-Lord iframing, or it was Vision iframing, or it was Iron Man iframing. So you do have to be careful. It definitely does take a bit of practice, but I'm getting this done with a tier 1 Agent 13. So even if you have worse cards than me, even if you have a worse build than me, I don't know if you could have a worse build than me though. I don't think she has any Uru or any Obelisk, and if she has an Obelisk, it's terrible because it's not proccing anything right now. There's no invincibility, there's no proc for damage. Yeah, you can definitely do this, and especially with a tier 2 Agent 13, but it's a very fun clear. This second stage is Maximus, and this is actually not a very difficult stage. He's tier 2, he could probably do this at tier 1, but I do it to illustrate the importance of knowing a character's skill damage. So in this case, 2, 3, 4, and 5 for Maximus, they deal energy damage. I mean, 4 and 5 just summon different types of enemies, or different types of allies, I should say, but 2 and 3 deal energy damage. 1 actually deals partially energy and partially physical damage. So you can see the reflect bubble that was on that's on Jessica Jones. If I had done the first skill again, that's why I took so much damage. It's because I had tried to do the first skill after their physical reflect was up. And I actually did this stage last week, and I died several times without understanding why until I realized, oh yeah, even though Maximus is an energy damage character, one of his skills deals physical damage. So definitely something to keep in mind. Here I can cast it because I know Punisher doesn't have his bubble up, but it's definitely something that I'm still reminded of in certain Shadowland stages, which is pretty crazy. This is a pretty interesting stage 3 clear with Gorgon. Now, if I had Gorgon tier 2, I would save him for a much higher stage to be used as a leadership, because he's a 45% physical attack leadership, very, very good. Definitely not useful for anything else, but you could use him for a stage 3 clear. Now, the interesting thing about Gorgon is he's got a stun on his 5th skill. He's got a nice, long 3-second stun on his 5th skill with the huge AoE and the iframe, so his 5th skill is really nice for Shadowland. He's also got a guard break on his 4th skill right there, so you can interrupt them for basically a 1-second stun if you can line them up. And then on his 2nd skill, he's got a stun as well, but the stun is very, very small AoE on his 2nd skill, so you have to get them really close together. As you can see, I only stunned Falcon in that attack. I wasn't able to stun War Machine, so it's actually pretty difficult, but you're basically just chain stunning. The 3rd skill gives him damage reduction, and this is basically how the stage works. I had to try this stage one or two times to get it right because Winter Soldier kept dodging me. So that's actually something that I want to talk about for multiple stage clears, and this is probably the first one, is that if you're only going to use a character for Shadowland, and if the character may just stay at tier 1 as well, you should consider using an Ignore Dodge Obelisk on them. So this goes, I'm not telling you guys to roll Ignore Dodge Obelisks, but what I'm saying is if you have, if you get one through a login event, or if you get one from Shadowland or whatever, if you just happen to get one, or if you happen to just roll one, and it's like, Ignore Dodge, something, 140 proc or 160 proc, you could definitely use those to reroll other obelisks. I'm not saying you should always keep them, but you could keep some of them now and then and give them to characters in Shadowland who have heavy CC abilities. And this stage 4 clear with Creel, with Absorbing Man is the same. You'll see that he relies on his stuns and his binds, and he's actually very, very fun to play, and he's actually quite underrated. I saw someone say as a joke on Reddit that he's criminally underrated because he's wearing like the typical prisoner gear, and he is, you know, he's a bad guy, he's a villain. But it's true, he is pretty underrated, and he's a monster. He's a monster for Shadowland. He's got really good CC, he's got really good guard break, he's got physical damage reduction on his third skill, and actually physical damage immunity and reflect. He's a fun character to play. The spinning around of the ball and chain are really nice. And he does work. He's got stuns, he's got binds, but you'll notice now and then with him and with other characters that just happened there that the enemy will dodge the attack. And specifically for characters in Shadowland that rely on their crowd control, their stuns and stuff, in order to win the stage, it's super important for those Gorgon type characters, for those Karnak and Absorbing Man type characters. Even, you could even say Songbird with the multiple stuns, with the stun and the bind that she has on 2 and 3. Having Ignore Dodge really helps because it means that you're more likely to always land your stuns and binds and snares. And then if you never miss, like there I just missed again, I had to use the 5th skill kind of early. If you never miss, then it's a lot easier to clear the stage. So it's just something that I thought, you know, is important, and I wanted to share with you guys, because sometimes people ask me, they have kind of janky, wonky obelisks. I think Ignore Dodge is a useful one for Shadowland, especially if you're trying to get some of these shittier, weaker, lesser built tier 1 characters to actually finish stages. And man, he could do a higher stage. He dominated that one. It's very, very fun. I recommend trying Absorbing Man. On to stage 5, Yellow Jacket. This is an easy stage for Yellow Jacket, especially tier 2, but I wanted to illustrate something. Yellow Jacket, like Maximus, has mostly energy damage, but his second skill actually deals physical damage. But the important thing here, unlike Maximus, is that Yellow Jacket's second skill is almost a full iframe. You can see at the end there, I took 3,000 damage, 3,900 damage. The last part of the skill is not an iframe, so he will take damage. So what I did here to show you guys is I let myself get hit by Cho. He activates his reflect with the bubble, and then I purposely, or actually didn't. I was supposed to purposely do the second skill again to show the reflect one more time, but it's important to know. This is a stage 5, the same hero stage 5, or that I did with Gorgon at 3. This is at 5 now with Hogan. And Hogan is basically just a better version of Gorgon. You spam the stun on 2 and 4. He's got a really nice AoE stun on 4 that just always hits, and he just slam jams. 5 for the clones, and he basically just locks down multiple opponents this way. I think I had to try this stage twice because they weren't bunching up together. It's really important positioning wise to get the characters, to get the enemies close to each other. Otherwise, what you can do is you can split them up and have the clones, specifically for Hogan and Fandral and Volstagg, have the clones take on one of the enemies on one side of the arena while you're taking on the other one, and then usually you'll finish that first one off after a few rounds of clones, and then you can go back and focus on the other one. But it's a pretty easy clear, and Hogan's a decent tier 1 character with a self-buffing leadership. This is a stage, we jumped from 6 to 8, 7 was kind of a boring clear. This is a stage 8 with Ulik. It's got the nice thematic value of Ulik versus Thor because he is like an Asgardian villain. Again, another character that's good for Shadowland because of the stuns. He also has buffs against super heroes. He does extra damage on his third skill to superheroes, so you want to tap that third skill as much as you can. But the 3-second stun on his 5th skill and the 2-second stun, I believe it's a 2-second stun or a 3-second stun on his second skill, combined with the refresh that he has from his 4-star passive, means that it's pretty easy to lock down enemies. And even when you're not locking them down, because there is a gap between the end of the 5-skill stun and the end of the 2-skill stun before you can use 5 again, you can semi-guard break with 4 and 1. So I would recommend doing, like, you know, 5-4, 2-1, or 5-4, 2-3-1. But it works, and it's super tight clear. I almost died, but I got it in the end. And Ulik is decent. Here, this is a stage 12 Kraven, and I wanted to show you guys this, kind of a little bit of a brag. I didn't take any damage almost the entire fight, and I was utilizing a skill that you may be doing unconsciously, you might not realize it, but essentially, when you're doing an iframe in these stages specifically, the enemies will all just freeze. The boss will sometimes freeze, sometimes he'll run away, but the enemies, as you can see, they're not running away, they're just frozen, they're just standing in place. And you can use that to your advantage because basically, instead of tapping your next iframe right away, just wait a second. You see I do this like a little bit of kiting for like a second and a half, and I run just far enough away from them, and they don't hit me because they're busy restarting their walking animation. So you're taking advantage of that like that half second in between your iframe ending and the computer starting up the walk animation for the enemies. They kind of have to target you as well. They have to figure out where you are in the arena. And so yeah, I took one hit the whole match. And it was just an epic run there with Kraven. I could have done it at tier 1 as well. It's just fun to do overall. This next stage, 13 with Malekith. I want to show you the full selection here because it was frustrating. It's a villain stage, and villains reflect physical damage. So for this stage, I wanted to use, you know, someone that didn't have a good leadership. Malekith doesn't have a good leadership for high Shadowland stages. The debuff is not as useful as like a damage buff. Like even MODOK is more useful. So I wanted to use Malekith, but I wasn't quite sure which one of his skills, if any of them, had Reflect. But I knew what I needed to do. His third skill has a snare, has a really nice 3-second snare. His first skill does kind of random, but sometimes really good damage. And then 5 and 4 have like this weird sort of bleed slash fear effect that kind of triggers, and it's got some guard breaking as well. I think this would be really hard to do at tier 1 with Malekith, but it may be possible with a better build. But what I realized is that I was actually doing damage with, I believe, his second skill. The end of the skill where he jumps down and he slams down, you die because of the Reflect. So I had a bunch of really close fights. It took me a few attempts. I couldn't get my cooldown there. That was a tragic death. But it took me a few attempts to actually get it right. With Malekith. Malekith is kind of a weird character too, because if you've played as him before, or if you're an OG, if you remember the old Malekith days where people would do the first skill and then pause the game and it would continue hitting. Basically, the way that they coded the first skill for Malekith, it's really weird. It does like a random number of hits. There's RNG literally on his first skill. So for some reason, sometimes it'll do like 10 hits, and sometimes it'll do like 50 hits. And you'll see sometimes you let the first skill go, and it just goes, and it just melts their HP. And then other times you do the first skill and does like no damage. It's really bizarre. I don't know if people have figured out since, you know, I last looked up why it is that Malekith's first skill does that. Like that one right there was crazy. It did like over 100,000 damage. Then you do another one, it does like 2 or 3 hits. I don't know if it feeds off of the existing debuffs that the enemy has to kind of stack extra attacks. But I basically just have to keep trying. So this is kind of a stage to not give up on. Not specifically this one, but this is just my version of never give up in Shadowland. You'll eventually get it. This one I wanted to illustrate for you guys. This is a stage 17 Kamala Khan. She can definitely do this stage. This is just a grind out stage where you're just slowly, you know, chipping away. Kamala tier 2 has the heal like Moon Knight, so she's basically, she's basically invincible. She's not gonna die. But I use Kamala Khan here instead of using another character. 1, because I don't have many tier 1 characters to use. But 2, she doesn't really offer much value beyond stage 30 of Shadowland. Her damage is just not good enough to use on any stage, even with a damage proc. I don't even think you can use her past, you know, maybe like high 20s, but you'll have to have a crazy build for her and high physical attack on your cards, and like a leadership possibly in a passive. She just doesn't have a lot of damage. And so her survivability is good, so that means she can be used on a lower stage, and she can kind of just grind the stage out. And what better stage to grind out than one of these stupid pot stages where you have to run around smashing those dumb pots to reduce his dodge and to not trigger his immunity. These are the kinds of characters, like your Moon Knights, like your Lizards. Lizards a little bit better because of the leadership, but characters that just have survivability and not much else, those are the characters that you want to prioritize if you have a larger roster for solo clearing Shadowland, because then characters who have support or leadership, they can be used to buff up other characters in higher stages, and then of course your super damage characters can be used in higher stages as well. This is a really fun stage 19 Doc Ock clear. Man, Doc Ock is still a huge sleeper. He's a great character for Shadowland, super fun to play, and I gotta say, when they reworked Dr. Octopus, nobody paid attention to it because he had a uniform. He had the Superior Spider uniform, so people just paid attention to that rework. But holy crap, his villain rework is actually so much better, and it really feels like I'm playing as Dr. Octopus whenever I play as him. I've made a couple of videos illustrating this, especially in Shadowland, because that's where I use Dr. Octopus. I honestly would use him in World Boss Ultimate if I could. I would really love for him to get an updated uniform in this kind of fashion. You know, maybe change just 1 or 2 skills around, Obviously, buff up his damage by like 1,000,000%. And then give him level 70, and I would totally use him. He's a super cool villain. He's an OG Spider-Man villain, and he's really easy to use in Shadowland. He's got, you know, the HP leadership to kind of make him extra tanky. He's got stuns, he's got guard breaks, and he's got that beautiful long iframe on 5 that ends in an 8 guard hit for 8 seconds. So he's really got kind of ideal, you know, fair but advantageous Shadowland buffs. And it's really easy to work characters into the corner with his 4th skill. It's just really fun to play. I don't know. Every time I play Shadowland, I have no problem finding a stage to use Dr. Octopus on. And if I'm not in a rush to play, I'll definitely use him. He's obviously not the fastest dude. He's going up on a minute 30 here. But it's really fun to play as him. And so I wonder if you guys have any characters like that you just like playing as them in Shadowland. They're not particularly good, but they're just fun. And don't say Dr. Octopus, because that's my answer, so you have to pick somebody else. But it's just a fun stage, fun clear. I actually just stalled here on purpose to kill that stupid robot before I killed Cap, just for fun. And man, Dr. Octopus kind of have a soft spot for the guy, for the OG laugher in Marvel Future Fight. This one is, this is also really dear to my heart, Shadowland clear. This is a stage 21 Karnak, probably one of the higher stages he can do, and this is like a stun fest. This is kind of like the Absorbing Man action that I was showing you before. This is chaining stun lock on 5 and 2 with the 1 second stun on 3. And this is like, I don't take damage for the majority of this fight here. I got lucky there with the dodge, but man, with good positioning and good timing, this is just like, this is so satisfying. Honestly, if you like Shadowland and you want a kick, you want to get a kick out of it or a punch out of it, pun intended, try Karnak, seriously. If you can pull this kind of shit off, if you can chain, there I was getting kind of flashy and I was trying to show off and I got hit. But if you like this, it's so much fun to pull off. Once you get the rhythm going, it's like you're dancing with the character and just boom, 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 stun, 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 pause, stun. And it's really nice. And you can mix it up and you can do different combos because you know when you need to use certain skills for certain stuns. And this is honestly when Shadowland is at its most satisfying, when you're rewarded for that kind of skill. Finally, I want to leave you guys with some funny stuff. Of course, this is my frustrating attempt. I think this was a stage 22 clear with Whiplash. If you guys don't know, Whiplash deals physical damage even though it's energy, so he keeps dying to physical reflect from Kingpin. I must have tried like 15 times and I died every single goddamn time. It was awful. So let me know what you guys think. Subscribe if you enjoy the content and you want to support me. This one's tragic as hell. And of course, if you like what you see, I hope to see you again tomorrow. Take care.